It's been over 40 years since The Terminator first hit theaters, but the cast's real stories are more dramatic than anything James Cameron ever filmed. Fame, failure, illness, and resilience, they've lived it all. And Linda Hamilton? Her transformation from action queen to fighter in real life is truly shocking. Stay with us. You won't believe what happened. Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. Let's be real. Back in 1984, nobody could forget the guy in shades who said, "I'll be back." That was Arnold Schwarzenegger, stepping into the role of the Terminator. Hard to believe, but back then people thought he might flop. Imagine that. The most unstoppable machine in cinema history almost didn't happen. His early films like Conan the Barbarian gave him fame, but also doubt. Could he act, or was he just muscles? When he signed on for the Terminator, even the studio hesitated. Arnold had to fight not just for the role, but for respect in an industry that often mocked him. Though the movie turned him into a star overnight, the success came with a cost. Action blockbusters like Predator and Total Recall demanded everything from him. Long shoots, punishing stunts, and constant pressure to top his last performance. Behind the cameras, whispers of scandal and politics followed him everywhere. The harshest blow came later, when his marriage to Maria Shriver collapsed after the world learned about his secret son. For a man who built his empire on discipline and control, that public humiliation was devastating. Arnold Schwarzenegger played the unstoppable Terminator in 1984 at 37. Today, he is 78, still acting, still training, still larger than life. With an estimated net worth of $450 million, he remains one of the most powerful figures in Hollywood. Proof that even after the darkest scandals, he found a way to keep moving forward. Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor. When people talk about Sarah Connor, they picture strength, guns, and unshakable determination. But the woman who played her, Linda Hamilton, was fighting demons of her own long before audiences ever saw her become a warrior on screen. Her career skyrocketed with Terminator 2, Judgment Day, turning her into one of Hollywood's fiercest female icons. But behind that fame, Linda was crumbling. She struggled with bipolar disorder, battled depression, and admitted to relying on cocaine just to get through the crushing weight of expectation. Her marriage to James Cameron, the director who had helped make her famous, only deepened the scars. Postpartum depression after the birth of their daughter Josephine left her vulnerable, and when the relationship fell apart, it cost her millions and nearly her life. She has spoken openly about a suicide attempt, proof of how brutal the spotlight can be. Stepping away from Hollywood gave her room to breathe. And yet, she found the courage to return, reprising Sarah Connor in Dark Fate and now stepping into new roles like Stranger Things. Her personal resilience has become just as legendary as the character she played. Linda Hamilton first became Sarah Connor at 27 in 1984. Today, at 69, she lives more privately with her partner and her dogs, still acting occasionally, with an estimated net worth of $15 million. Her scars are real, but so is her resilience. The true heart of Sarah Connor lives on in her. Lance Henriksen as Detective Hal Vukovich. You don't usually think of the Terminator and shout out, "Detective Vukovich," right? Yet that's the gritty role Lance Henriksen took on. The cop pushed to the edge, no match for a merciless cyborg. Even with such a small part, the film gave Lance something he couldn't afford to lose, a lifeline he clung to with everything he had. But Hollywood wasn't kind. Roles were scarce, money was tight, and rejection was constant. By the time he landed small but important parts in Close Encounters of the Third Kind and The Terminator, Henriksen was still fighting to prove himself. The pressure to stay relevant pushed him toward alcohol, and it nearly cost him everything. Even after his breakthrough as Bishop in Aliens, 1986, things weren't easy. He was typecast in horror and low-budget films, often working just to pay the bills. Projects like Pumpkinhead brought cult fame, but not the financial security or recognition he longed for. By the late 80s, his addictions and failed marriages nearly ended his career. He clawed his way back in the 2000s, finding sobriety and stability, but the road was steep, filled with personal regret and professional disappointment. Lance Henriksen played the weary Detective Vukovich in 1984 at 44. Today, at 85, he's still acting in independent films, still beloved at conventions, with a net worth of around $6 million. His journey is proof of resilience, an artist who never gave up, even when life pushed him to the edge. Michael Biehn as Kyle Reese. Kyle Reese was the soldier who crossed time for love, but Michael Biehn's real story was far from a fairy tale. His career looked ready to explode, but behind the camera, he was falling apart. James Cameron saw something in him, casting him again in Aliens and the Abyss. On screen, he was everything a hero should be: brave, passionate, selfless. Off-screen, he was drowning in alcohol. His addiction tore through marriages and quietly convinced Hollywood that he couldn't be trusted. Even when he landed hits like Tombstone, his reputation followed him. By the late 1990s, the jobs slowed, the calls stopped, and his career slipped away. Then came the real breaking point: a stroke and open-heart surgery in 2008 that nearly killed him. He later admitted he had been his own worst enemy, throwing away opportunities most actors only dream about. But Michael refused to disappear. He fought for sobriety, turned to indie films, and even found a second wind in voice work, most recently in Predator, Killer of Killers. Fans never stopped loving him as Kyle Reese, the tragic hero who gave everything. Michael Biehn first became Kyle Reese at 28 in 1984. Today, at 69, he lives in Los Angeles with his wife, Jennifer Blanc, focusing on independent projects, with an estimated net worth of $8 million. His story is one of talent, loss, survival, and a reminder that Hollywood heroes are often fighting their own private wars. Paul Winfield as Lieutenant Ed Traxler. Lieutenant Ed Traxler was the steady cop in the Terminator, the man who tried to keep control when the unimaginable broke loose. Paul Winfield played him with quiet authority, grounding the film with a sense of order and humanity that made every scene more believable. But Winfield's career was never easy. After his Oscar-nominated performance in Sounder, 1972, he should have been flooded with opportunities. Instead, Hollywood pushed him into corners: authority figures, generals, and lawyers, while films like Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, proved he was capable of much more. The frustration of being typecast followed him throughout his career. His fight for recognition grew heavier as younger actors passed him by. While he earned acclaim in television projects like King, 1978, the industry often ignored his talent, making him battle harder for roles that should have come easily. Each audition was a reminder that being a black actor in the 1980s meant working twice as hard for half the credit. Illness added more weight. Years of diabetes and obesity made film sets exhausting, and by the late 90s, his health began to limit the work he could do. Even so, he kept pushing, driven by the same determination that carried him from Watts to Hollywood, refusing to let sickness erase his craft. Paul Winfield played Lieutenant Ed Traxler in The Terminator, 1984, when he was 45 years old. He died in 2004 at the age of 64, leaving behind more than 100 film and television roles, including classics like Sounder and Star Trek II, with a net worth of around $3 million. Rick Rossovich as Matt Buchanan. Matt Buchanan brought a little light to The Terminator. As Ginger's upbeat boyfriend, he was the normal guy caught in extraordinary horror. Rick Rossovich gave the role charm, and though his screen time was short, he made the character memorable. After that film, he stepped into the high-octane world of Top Gun 1986. The movie became a cultural phenomenon, but while it launched Tom Cruise into superstardom, Rossovich found himself struggling to break through. The disappointment of watching his co-stars soar while he was overlooked created a frustration that would linger. The 1990s brought steady work, but not the recognition he had hoped for. In Navy SEALs, 1990, and later in the TV series Pacific Blue, 1996 to 2000, Rossovich carried the weight of demanding roles, but Hollywood still saw him as a supporting face rather than a leading man. The constant battle to prove himself left him drained. By the time newer generations of action stars arrived, Rick's career had slowed down. He took smaller roles and eventually pulled away from the Hollywood machine. The struggle wasn't about lack of talent. It was about an industry that never gave him the same backing as his peers. Rick Rossovich played Matt Buchanan in The Terminator, 1984, when he was 27 years old. Today, at 68, he lives a quieter life, occasionally returning for projects like Where the Streets Have No Name, 2025, with a net worth of about $5 million. Bess Mata as Ginger Ventura. Ginger wasn't just Sarah Connor's roommate. She was the burst of fun and energy that lit up the screen before everything turned dark. Always joking, always moving, Ginger felt like the heartbeat of normal life in a film filled with fear. Bess Mata brought that carefree spirit to the role, even doing her own stunts to keep the energy real. But behind the fun of that role came the difficulty of carving a space in Hollywood. After her brief success, Mata found herself struggling to land major acting opportunities. Instead, she was pulled into the demanding world of fitness, which gave her stability, but took her away from the career she once dreamed of. Her biggest breakthrough outside of The Terminator was hosting the groundbreaking exercise program 20-Minute Workout in the early 1980s. While it made her a household name in fitness circles, it also boxed her in. Casting directors couldn't see past the aerobics star. That struggle between being recognized and being typecast haunted her acting ambitions. Film roles became rare. Mata appeared in small projects, but never reached the same cinematic high again. The industry moved on quickly, and while she built a quiet life in teaching and personal training, the frustration of a career that never fully took off lingered in the background. Bess Mata played Ginger Ventura in The Terminator, 1984, when she was 26 years old. Today, at 67, she lives privately, still teaching fitness classes, with a net worth of about $2 million. Earl Boen as Dr. Peter Silberman. Every great sci-fi movie needs a skeptic, and in The Terminator, that role belonged to Dr. Peter Silberman. He was the psychiatrist who smirked, doubted, and dismissed Sarah Connor's warnings as pure fantasy, until the truth came crashing down. Earl Boen gave Silberman a mix of arrogance and charm that made audiences both laugh and bristle. But Earl's career was never without its difficulties. Though he became a recognizable face in supporting roles, he was often typecast as doctors, lawyers, or bureaucrats. While films like 9 to 5 and his television guest spots kept him visible, breaking free from those stereotypes proved nearly impossible. Voice acting gave him a second chance. His work in video games like World of Warcraft and Monkey Island opened new doors, but it came late in his career, after years of being overlooked in Hollywood casting. He often spoke about the challenge of sustaining a career when you were always the side character instead of the lead. Then came illness. In 2022, Boen was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, forcing him to spend his final months away from the industry he had served for decades. It was a cruel ending for an actor who had spent his life giving so much to film, television, and voice work. Earl Boen played Dr. Peter Silberman in The Terminator, 1984, when he was 43 years old. He passed away in 2023 at the age of 81, leaving behind a legacy of unforgettable supporting roles and a net worth of about $4 million. Dick Miller as the gun shop clerk. Walk into the Terminator's gun shop scene, and you'll meet a clerk who seems more amused than alarmed by his customers' questions. That little role, filled with dry humor and casual ease, belonged to Dick Miller. In just a few minutes, he managed to create a character fans still talk about decades later. Miller's entire career was built on moments like that, small roles that stuck in people's minds. Working constantly with director Joe Dante, he became a cult icon in films like Gremlins, 1984, and The Howling. Yet despite his talent and charisma, Hollywood never gave him leading roles. He was the character actor, the guy everyone recognized but few remembered by name. That invisibility weighed on him. For every memorable scene, there were countless low-budget projects, rushed productions, and films that barely saw release. Miller himself often joked about being the king of cameos, but underneath the humor, there was frustration. He knew he had the skill to do more. Even in later years, when health slowed him down, he kept appearing in horror conventions and independent films. It was his way of holding on to the craft that had defined him, even as the industry often overlooked his contribution. Dick Miller played the gun shop clerk in The Terminator, 1984, when he was 56 years old. He died in 2019 at the age of 90, leaving behind a cult legacy in horror and sci-fi and a net worth of about $2 million. Sean Sheps as Nancy. Sometimes the smallest roles leave the sweetest impression. That was the case with Nancy, Sarah Connor's upbeat co-worker in The Terminator. She wasn't part of the action, but Sean Sheps gave her a spark of life that made Nancy feel real, a reminder of ordinary people in the middle of extraordinary events. But acting wasn't an easy road for her. Though she landed appearances in TV projects, including playing Rebecca in the pilot of The Golden Girls, her career never found steady ground. The struggle for auditions and the endless cycle of rejection made it clear that Hollywood wouldn't open its biggest doors for her. Instead of fading away, Sheps fought to reinvent herself. She turned to writing, carving a place in an industry that had once shut her out. Yet even there, it was uphill, competing in a world where screenwriters rarely get recognition, and where every project can vanish before it's made. The work was tough, the visibility minimal, but it gave her stability. She may not have become a star, but she kept her creative voice alive, proving resilience in an industry that often crushes it. Sean Sheps played Nancy in The Terminator, 1984, when she was 23 years old. Today, at 64, she works as a screenwriter, makes the occasional convention appearance, and has a net worth of about $1 million. Franco Columbu as the future Terminator. He didn't have many lines, but Franco Columbu's appearance as a battle-worn Terminator in the future war scenes gave the movie an extra layer of grit. Short, stocky, and carved out of granite, Franco looked like someone Skynet itself might have built. His presence in those flashes of a devastated world was brief, but it carried weight. Franco's real battles weren't in front of the camera. They were in the gym. Coming from Sardinia, he had to fight his way into bodybuilding alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was smaller than his rivals, constantly told he'd never make it, yet he won Mr. Olympia twice and became one of the strongest men alive. His victory was also shadowed by setbacks. A devastating knee injury in the 1977 World's Strongest Man competition nearly ended his career. The injury left him sidelined for years, forcing him to endure surgery, pain, and doubt. But Franco clawed his way back, winning Mr. Olympia again in 1981. That comeback was one of bodybuilding's greatest redemption stories, but it came at the cost of constant pain that followed him for the rest of his life. Hollywood gave him moments, roles in Conan the Barbarian, The Running Man, and of course, The Terminator. But he never escaped the shadow of being Arnold's right-hand man. While he wanted recognition, he often found himself typecast as the strong sidekick, not the star. Franco Columbu played the future Terminator in The Terminator, 1984, when he was 43 years old. He died in 2019 at the age of 78 after a sudden heart attack while swimming in Sardinia, leaving behind a bodybuilding legacy, film appearances, and a net worth of about $10 million. Bill Paxton as the punk leader. Blink, and you'll miss him. But Bill Paxton made his short role as the blue-haired punk leader unforgettable. In The Terminator, he's the cocky thug who mocks a naked stranger and pays for it seconds later. That tiny part showed off his wild energy, the same spark that would later make him a fan favorite. But Paxton's career was anything but smooth. After years of hustling in Hollywood, he landed roles in Weird Science and James Cameron's Aliens. His performance as Private Hudson, hysterical, terrified, and heroic, became iconic. Still, Paxton often found himself battling to be taken seriously, bouncing between supporting roles while his peers grabbed the spotlight. Even with hits like Tombstone and Apollo 13, the pressure never let up. Paxton took risks, starring in Twister, 1996, which became a box office smash, but critics often dismissed him as an everyman rather than a leading man. The sting of not being fully recognized haunted his otherwise strong run. Directing Frailty in 2001 proved his artistic depth, winning critical acclaim. Yet Hollywood rarely gave him a second chance to direct, and he returned to acting with the same frustrations, always respected, but rarely crowned. As his health declined, those pressures collided with physical strain, leading to the surgery complications that ended his life far too soon. Bill Paxton played the punk leader in The Terminator, 1984, when he was 29 years old. He died in 2017 at the age of 61 from heart surgery complications, leaving behind a celebrated career in film and television and a net worth of about $40 million. Marianne Mueller-Lyle as the wrong Sarah. It was one of the Terminator's most chilling touches. Sarah Connor wasn't the only Sarah Connor. Marianne Mueller-Lyle played the wrong Sarah, an innocent woman gunned down simply for having the same name. Her role lasted minutes, but the shock of that scene has haunted viewers ever since. Mueller-Lyle's career was a marathon of small but steady roles. She appeared in over 150 films and television shows, constantly working but rarely celebrated. That grind brought its own exhaustion. Endless auditions, typecasting, and the feeling of being trapped as the background face. Even when she found recognition in films like Return to Me, 2000, or Payback, 1999, it was often fleeting. Hollywood's brutal hierarchy left her stuck in supporting parts while others soared. The fight to stay relevant, especially as she aged, was another weight on her shoulders. Despite those struggles, she turned to the stage, where she found freedom to play roles Hollywood never gave her. Theater became a place of creative survival, proof that her craft went far beyond the blink-and-miss-it roles she carried on screen. Marianne Mueller-Lyle played the wrong Sarah in The Terminator, 1984, when she was 36 years old. Today, at 77, she continues to perform on stage, with a net worth of about $2 million. Joe Morton as Miles Dyson. Few characters in the franchise carried the kind of tragic weight that Miles Dyson did in Terminator 2, Judgment Day. Joe Morton played the brilliant scientist whose work unknowingly gave birth to Skynet. His final scenes, dying to undo the damage he helped unleash, remain some of the most powerful in the series. Morton's career, though full of acclaim, was often defined by struggle. Early on, after a Tony nomination for Raisin, 1973, Hollywood still hesitated to give him leading roles. Films like The Brother from Another Planet, 1984, showed his range, but the industry too often reduced him to the reliable character actor. By the time Terminator 2, 1991 arrived, he was 44 and still fighting for recognition. The success of Dyson didn't fully open the doors either. Morton spent the 1990s hustling through projects like Speed, 1994, and City of Hope, 1991, always respected but rarely elevated to star status. The constant pressure of being overlooked took its toll. Even as television revived him, with an Emmy-winning turn in Scandal and long runs in Eureka, Morton himself admitted the exhaustion of building a career on biting, brilliant roles that didn't always translate into lasting fame. The fight to stay visible has been relentless. Joe Morton played Miles Dyson in Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991, when he was 44 years old. Today, at 78, he continues to act in television and film, directs occasionally, and holds a net worth of about $5 million. Brian Thompson as the second punk. He may not have been on screen for long, but Brian Thompson made his mark as the second punk who learns the hard way that mocking a stranger can be deadly. In The Terminator, standing shoulder to shoulder with Bill Paxton, Thompson brought the physical menace of a street thug, unknowingly picking a fight with a machine. It was his very first role, but it hinted at the intimidating presence that would shape his career. The road ahead wasn't glamorous. Thompson's unique facial structure and towering physique got him noticed, but they also boxed him in. Hollywood saw him as the villain before he even walked into auditions. His breakout as the night slasher in Cobra, 1986, was terrifying, but it locked him into playing psychopaths, aliens, and killers. That kind of typecasting guaranteed work, but at the cost of artistic freedom. He tried to push against the mold with television. Roles in Werewolf, Star Trek, The Next Generation, and later The X-Files gave him more dimension, but the struggle was constant. Casting directors wanted the scary face, not the actor beneath it. For Thompson, every audition was a battle to prove he could be more than muscle and menace. Not every risk paid off. When he played Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat, Annihilation, 1997, the film bombed critically, and Thompson bore the brunt of the backlash. Years of effort could be undone by a single flop, and the frustration of being blamed for weak scripts and bad production choices weighed heavily on him. Brian Thompson played the second punk in The Terminator, 1984, when he was 25 years old. Today, at 66, he continues to work steadily in film and television, most recently appearing in The Tragedy of Macbeth, 2022. His net worth in 2025 is estimated at around $3 million, a testament to decades of persistence in an industry that rarely gave him an easy path. The cast of The Terminator went through transformations nobody could have predicted. Which one surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next story.